Good morning, everyone. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. Today we are going to continue our plant study, and we're going to be talking about plant climates today. So, as you can see, I have a couple different pictures of a couple different plants. This one over here on the left is some sunflowers, the one in the middle is some corn, and the one down on the right is some lettuce. And we're just going to be talking about the different climates that plants need to grow in. So, what kind of climate do you think that plants need to grow, like to successfully grow? And remember, climate is just the weather conditions in a specific area over a long period of time. So, even though all plants need water, sunlight, and nutrients to grow, different plants are going to need different amounts of these things. So, if we go back up to these three pictures, these three different plants are going to need different amounts of sunlight, water, and nutrients to grow successfully. So, when you were in a store, have you ever seen like a seed pack like you would buy at a store? So, here's a couple of different pictures of some seed packs that I had at my house. My dad actually does a community garden, and I help him with that. So, these are just some packs that he has and that I took some pictures of. So this one over here on the left is some Goldie Honey Bear sunflower seeds. And if you look at them, you can kind of see that up at the top it kind of gives you some information about the plant and telling us how big they can grow and everything. And then it also tells us when to sow outside. So that just means when it's going to grow, like when to plant it outside. And they are recommending 1 to 2 weeks after your last frost. So every year, as you know, in the winter we get some frost, and even early spring we will get some frost. And so they are recommending that if you're going to plant these outside, you do it 1 to 2 weeks after our last frost. Same with indoors, except the time period changes a little bit. As you can see, it says 2 to 4 weeks before your average last frost date. And it does also note that sunflowers are sensitive to root disturbance. So they want us to sow in a biodegradable pot, which means it's going to decompose when you plant it in the ground. So you can just plant the whole pot right in the ground, and that pot will decompose and become part of the soil. It also tells us, and I'm going to mark it in red, the days to emerge. That means how long it's going to take it to emerge and come up to the ground. It tells us how deep to bury our seeds. It tells us how far we need to space our seeds apart and how to thin the plants out, because oftentimes when you plant sunflower seeds, they are very dense and very thick, and so sometimes you will need to thin them out. Now if you look at the other two seed packs, it tells us the same things. You can see this middle one has actually been torn open because it has been planted. Some of those seeds have been planted. So again, you could read through it, and it's going to tell you when is the ideal time to plant these seeds. Additionally, the left one and this middle one right here, they actually show us a picture of the seedling, so kind of what it's going to look like, right? And then over here on the right hand, we have some sweet corn. And that one, while it doesn't tell us or show us a picture, it does tell us everything we need to know about planting these seeds, taking care of them, growing them. Okay? So, now let's kind of shift a little bit. So, let's talk about a cactus. What do you think a cactus would need, like in a climate? So, a cactus is going to need a desert climate. They need very little water to survive and are capable of surviving very hot temperatures. Like, think about when you think of a desert, you always think might think of those giant big cactuses. They just survive very hot temperatures, and as we know, a desert is very hot. But did you know that the prickly spines of a cacti are actually modified leaves? I actually did not know that, so that was something I learned as well. I think that's really cool. And a fun fact about cacti, some of them can store up to 200 gallons of water during a downpour. That is a lot of water. Again, I've included a picture of a cactus. Okay, I'm sure we know what cacti look like, but I've included a picture of one. What about mosses and ferns? What kind of climate do you think they would need? So again, over here this is some moss. This is some moss. These are fern leaves. So these plants can be found near the entrance of caves. And mosses and ferns grow using the small amount of light that is near the entrance of a cave, because we know a cave is going to be a dark space, so there's not going to be any light. So plants can't necessarily grow inside a cave, but around the opening of that cave, around the entrance, mosses and ferns can grow. So these plants need a cool and moist environment to grow, and sometimes their roots can grow deep down into the cave and even into streams, which again I think is pretty cool. Pretty cool fact about them. So, oh, my picture shifted. But what kind of plant do you think this is? So this is actually a coffee plant. I did not know this is what a coffee plant looks like. It's pretty cool. So this plant can only grow in certain places near the Earth's equator, so like kind of in the middle of the Earth, right? That's where the equator is. So these plants need a cool, warm, tropical climate and usually grow at higher altitudes in cloud forests. They're really sensitive to temperature, and the optimal temperature for this plant to grow is going to be 64 degrees Fahrenheit through 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So really like a 6-degree temperature margin there for this plant to grow. They also are going to need a nutrient-rich soil and an area with very few pests or diseases, so like insects and bugs that can eat them, right? So, some things to remember is it's important to know what kind of conditions a seed needs before you plant it. And when growing a plant, you not only need to meet its basic needs, but you're also going to need to make sure you give it the right amounts of the things that it needs. And remember, if you're going to plant seeds at home, which I recommend you try to do, in school we are going to grow marigolds with the students in school, and we are growing a corn plant in class, which I will show you some pictures of later this week. So we're actually going to grow a corn plant. So again, just some things to remember, things that are going to be important to know. Okay, so now we're going to kind of move into some environmental changes. And for this part, I would like for you to go get your notebook, your 5-subject notebook, turn to your science section, and you can put environmental change like on the next clean page at the top. Pause this video as you need to take some notes. I'm not going to make you write down everything, so I will circle the things in red that I want you to write down. Okay? So, environmental change. So what happens to plants as the environment changes? So we know that the Earth's environment is always changing, and sometimes that environment around a plant will change. So one common environmental change is called a drought, and a drought is a period of unusually dry weather in a certain area. So I would like you to write that down. So droughts, a period of unusually dry weather in a certain area. And then when a drought does occur, many plants do not grow well. They tend to wilt or to die because they just don't get enough water to support the stem and to help in its photosynthesis. So I would also like you to write down, when a drought occurs, many plants do not grow well. They tend to wilt or die because they do not get enough water to support the stem and help in photosynthesis. Again, feel free to pause this as we go to take your notes. So, what would happen to plants in an environment if a forest fire happened? So, when a forest fire happens, it just tears through plant life and kills everything and anything in its path. It will destroy everything. However, some plants will actually drop their seeds during a forest fire. Even though a plant may die, if it drops its seed during the fire, the seed will produce a new plant. And some plants, like conifer plants, need this change, which is why there are some controlled forest fires in forest areas. So, from this slide, what I want you to write down is this first bullet point, and I'm just going to circle the bullet. And I would like you to write down the second bullet point, and you can write down this, let my die, but it will drop seeds during the fire, and then write down this last, that some plants like conifers actually need that change to their environment to help produce new plants. So, can animals and organisms affect plants? Well, yes. So, if more plant-eating animals or insects move into an area, the amount of plants may get so low that they just can't survive, and they can't reproduce fast enough to survive. Meaning, like, all these animals and insects that are eating these plants are eating them way faster than they can reproduce. Also, it works in reverse. If some animals do not move into certain areas, some plants cannot reproduce. For example, apple trees and other fruit trees depend on pollinators like bees. And bees are an essential part of the pollination process for the formation of fruits. So like this fruit over here, like they have to have bees to pollinate. Okay? So all you need to write down for this is this first bullet point, because again it works in reverse as well. You can also make a note that it works the opposite way as well. So some things to remember. The Earth's environment is always changing, and the survival of plants depends on certain conditions, and sometimes the plants can die or stop growing if the environment changes are too drastic. Again, meaning like some plants will die and they won't be able to survive and reproduce and drop seeds so that they can continue to reproduce. So all I want you to write down from this slide is this last bullet point, and then I'm going to show you what your assignment looks like for today. So your assignment for today is going to look like this. It's called the Plant Climates Chart, and I have included a picture of each type of plant, so the cactus, the fern, and the coffee plant. And you may want to go back in this video and find where we're talking about these three plants to help you fill in this climate column over here. Once you do that, I hope you finish up the rest of your day. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you tomorrow.